This video is brought to you by Squarespace. When it comes to websites, online stores, etc., there's no place to build a beautiful online presence like Squarespace. Also, I have a new podcast. It's called Suck Off. It's about Succession. You should check it out. Link in the description. Hey, how's it going? Welcome to the first What I Watched this month of 2023. What I watched in December. I started the month with the Our Planet behind the scenes documentary. I've been watching Our Planet for the first time. It's weirdly fun to watch, and seeing the behind the scenes of how they made this show has been mind-blowing, which is not a surprise. Mad props to everyone behind this show because it is quite the achievement, but the last 5 minutes made me want to die. Then I watched 20th Century. This is about a Broadway impresario who tries to win back an actress while on a train. It's an early Howard Hawks screwball comedy, and I loved it. The pace of this movie is insanely quick. It felt like I pressed play and all of a sudden it was over. I discovered it through Funny Pages director Owen Klein's Sight and Soundless, which tracks because this has the same kind of chaotic style of comedy that his film had, and I love it. It's my favorite kind of comedy, and it's the kind that still works really well today. Then I watched Clue. Believe it or not, this was my first time watching Clue, and now I'm experiencing the typical where has this been all my life thoughts. Because seriously, as someone like myself who is always looking for a silly time at the movies, Clue is one of the silliest of times. It takes a little bit of time to properly get where it needs to be, but I think the chaos only works because of the meticulous setup. The last 20 minutes of this movie is a full-blown masterpiece in comedic filmmaking. It's exactly what a movie about a board game should be. Again, where has this been all my life? Then I rewatched Finding Nemo. I think this might be a hot take, but I really believe this is a top 5 Pixar film. As far as world building, it might just be their most colorful and inviting. I don't think there's a single bad character in this, and the message has that perfect blend of being very easy to understand for kids, but also pretty moving for adults. Then I rewatched The Naked Gun. Not a lot to add to this other than I still think this is one of the funniest movies ever made. It will never fail to make me laugh, and that is all I have to say. Then I watched Trouble in Paradise. If you like Wes Anderson or any sort of quirky kind of filmmaking, you'll love this. All the actors have this very sly way of performing that feels very self-aware for its time. It has some twists and turns that still work really well today. Yeah, I had a really good time with this movie. I'm starting to realize the 1930s were kind of an amazing time for comedies. Then I rewatched The Grinch. This was part of my all-day theater video, and yeah, didn't finish it, but I'm still counting it. As mentioned in that video, I don't think this film is offensively bad at all. It's pretty decent for Illumination, but it's also not something I would ever show my kid personally. I will say though, Kenan Thompson and Benedict Cumberbatch, really good in this. Good performances. Then I rewatched Top Gun Maverick. Can I just say, I did not expect that many people to get that angry about me putting this in my top 10 this year. I will recognize that, yeah, it is pretty blatant military propaganda, but I also think it's one of the best made films of the year. I'm not about to sit here and lie to you. It was a blast to watch, and I will be watching it again. Puts a grin on my face every time I see it. Then I watched Devotion. If you watched my all-day video, you know how I feel about this. I love what the cast is doing, and a lot of the cinematography is kind of cool to look at. I also think the story it's telling is very interesting, but it ultimately feels like one cliche after another. Everything about the movie, from its story to its performances, is all pretty remarkable, but the way it decides to present all of this comes out a little flat. Then I rewatched The Fabelmans. I'm sick of talking about this movie, I'll be honest. I think it's really good. At this point, I would definitely consider it top-tier Spielberg. It's a very inspiring and kind of insane movie to make. That one shot of Sammy Fabelman in the mirror filming the family as they cry about the divorce is haunting and unforgettable, considering Spielberg was in the room shooting a recreation of his parents' divorce. It's a weird movie. Then I rewatched Tar. The second time you watch this is like a different movie entirely. I love going in knowing who Lydia Tarr is beforehand, and that it's okay to laugh at her a bit. The cinematography in this is incredible. It has the same sort of fragile feeling to it that something like Portrait does, and the sound design is honestly kind of terrifying. It's too quiet on purpose. Then I watched Avatar. I refuse to say how I watched this movie. It's a bit embarrassing, but what I will say is that when the visual spectacle of this is stripped away, which is absolutely not how this is intended to be experienced, you're left with just the story, and the story itself is really just whatever. Jake Sully is a boring dude, I'm sorry, and while I mostly agree with the film's stance on its environmental topics, the villain of the film feels a bit cliche, but I think Big Jim's goal was to write an incredibly simple and accessible story so that the viewer could easily feel invested while letting the breathtaking visuals kind of just wash over them. That makes sense to me. But personally, I'd just like a bit more meat with the narrative here because, like I said, given the way I watched this, I didn't feel a thing. Then I rewatched Titanic. This, on the other hand, made me feel everything. It makes sense why this would be one of the biggest movies of all time, but I'm also like, damn, James Cameron really just traumatized an entire generation of people with this one. I always forget how devastating this movie really is. It is one of the hardest hitting endings out there, even when it's been referenced to death at this point, which speaks to the quality here. He did not get there with just likable actors or gripping source material. He got there with some really ambitious and vivid filmmaking. You gotta take a warm bath after this movie. Like, oh my god. Its classic status is well deserved. It's kind of like Climax when you think about it. Then I watched Avatar: The Way of Water. I already did a video on this one, but to briefly summarize some of my thoughts, I thought it was fun. I had a terrible theater experience that definitely affected the immersive experience of it all, but that said, I still had a pretty good time with the movie itself. It is amazing to me that James Cameron can exceed the expectations audience had after the first Avatar, just as far as VFX go, because this looks like nothing I've ever seen before. The story is a massive step up from the first one. It actually makes me kind of excited to watch the ones that come after this. I just wish there wasn't so much HFR. Then I watched The Earrings of Madame De. I could not take my eyes off of the lead in this movie. There's something about her performance that is so magnetic. I definitely struggled to find what exactly the tone of this was. It started off sort of comedic and then slowly turned into something way sadder than I was expecting, but I really enjoyed it. Definitely gonna give it a rewatch though, because I was very sleepy when I watched this. Then I watched Burn After Reading. You know, this is probably the best Coen Brothers movie if you've only seen a few Coen Brothers movies. I've always been a Burn After Reading defender. I think it has some of the Coen's best characters, it has a great ending, and it's a brisk and easy watch. It flies by. But I can definitely see why some people would call it one of their weaker films, as it feels sort of insignificant compared to the stories they've told in other works. But I'd argue this is equally as dense and really understands adults going through midlife crises and the destructive nature that comes with doing quite literally anything else but confronting your own emotions, whether that be through exercise, alcohol, sex. It's not changing the game or anything. It's not that deep, but it's just a good time. Then I rewatched Glass Onion. I love this movie, and I'm not going to spoil it, but now that most people have seen it, I feel like I can talk a little bit more in depth and say I think it uses the contemporary online references pretty well. I think they work because the whole point of the series has always been to tell Agatha Christie-style whodunits through a contemporary lens, which is exactly what it's doing. And I also think Rian Johnson makes these jokes funny, unlike something like, I don't know, SNL. So yeah, I think it pulls that off. I think the mystery is really good. I think the performances are fun and colorful. I think it says something that these references are already kind of outdated, but they still work, so I don't think it's gonna get any more outdated as things move on. The first one is better, of course, but this is a good movie. I had a lot of fun. Then I rewatched It's a Wonderful Life, and yeah, it's a Christmas classic. Jimmy Stewart's amazing. What is there to say about this at this point? Then I watched RRR. I know you guys have been waiting for this one, and I gotta say, this is really good. I'll be honest, I wasn't completely on board when it started. I wasn't entirely sold on the story when it started, but that only lasted about 30 minutes because after that, I was glued to the screen. It's hard to pick a favorite shot in this movie. It seems like every choice tops the previous one. It is an at times hilariously over-the-top spectacle kind of experience. The idea of doing too much is just non-existent here because it will go wherever it needs to go to entertain you. I could not tell you any of the historical significance of this movie. I don't know that much about the history this film seems to be about, so I have nothing to offer there. But as a cinematic experience alone, I can truly say this is one of the most off-the-wall, insane movies I've seen in years, but it's never so out there that it fails to find like an emotional side to it, and that's thanks to the two amazing lead performances. My god, did I feel for these two dudes. There is nothing like male friendship, which speaking of, then I rewatched The Banshees of Inisherin. I'm gonna just repeat what I said on Letterboxd because I feel I like what I said. This is the first movie I've shown my dad in a long time that he didn't fall asleep to, which is such an achievement that I might make it my movie of the year. It gets better every rewatch. Don't honestly know what is holding it back at all, which is why I had to bump it all the way up to a 5. I notice a new detail every viewing. I only just this time saw that when Colm is standing on the beach in the first hour, he's standing on the foot tracks of the man who walked into the water the night before, which is a crazy image. The score didn't really do much for me my first time, but I've grown to really love the ways it uses such tiny sounds to drive a story. It really fits and adds to the tone. I just love how simple and unpretentious pretentious and sad and true this movie is. You wouldn't think something this simple would be so rewatchable, but I can't wait to watch it again and discover all the new things I pick up on. I love this movie. It's probably a bit higher on my end of the year list on a rewatch. And I rewatched The Fabelmans again, this time with my parents. They were pretty lukewarm, but I spent most of this movie trying not to violently sob next to them. My mom also did not know who John Ford was, so that's that. Then I finished the month and year with Billy Wilder's The Apartment. If you've seen the film, you know that this is the best movie to end the year with, and getting to watch this with a packed crowd in 35mm at the Music Box Theater, the theater I spent most of my time at this last year, it just felt special. There is a lot to love about this movie, but this time around I really paid attention to how unique Jack Lemmon's erratic and dweeby performance was. It feels like I'm really used to these older Hollywood leads being calm and cool and kind of stoic, but Jack Lemmon is just a certified goofball, literally SpongeBob SquarePants behavior, and it's just one of many things that I really love about this movie. It's one of the most perfect movies anyone's ever made. If you haven't seen it, you're missing out. Good New Year's movie. And hey, that's what I watched this month. Thanks for watching. Go watch these films and form your own opinion. And before you head out, I want to thank this week's sponsor, Squarespace. Now, Squarespace, if you didn't already know, is a place where you can go online to build your brand, whether that be through an online store, a blog, a portfolio, you name it. They have professional portfolio designs where you can create galleries for your work, as well as password protected pages for clients. I personally love their video block feature, which allows me to showcase some of my favorite films and videos in a way that matches my style. Plus, they have a built-in mobile web designer, which makes it so that any website you make will look great no matter what platform it's on, while still matching that unique style of yours. If you've been looking for a chance or an opportunity to make a website, Squarespace is the best place to go to do so. I really love it. My friends love it. My family love it. Give it a chance. Best part about it all, though, is that if you go to squarespace.com/Karsten, you can get 10% off of your first purchase. Seriously, no reason not to give it a chance. So thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Thanks for watching this video. And you know what? I'll see you guys in the next one.